Well, there you go. Sean Cruzen back for another show from the Coca-Cola Space Science Center, and we're so happy to have you with us again today. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here, as always.
Hey, it's really great to see you, and there's a lot of events occurring now. We have to also put this into context. There are a lot of things going on at Columbus State University and educational system, University System of Georgia here in the state of Georgia. How are you guys holding up at the Coca-Cola Space Science Center?
You know, we understand that the state is under a big challenge to figure out their budget. The university system is also under a large challenge to figure out their budget, and they're passing all those challenges on down to Dr. Mescon here at Columbus State University. And you know, we continue to support the mission of CSU, and we're just standing by to see how all this budget problem sorts itself out, and what we need to do to be able to jump in and help out the university system.
Well, I tell you, you guys do a great job down there and provide such a service to the community. I certainly wish you the best in all of this, and certainly we're all going to have to weather this storm, and you know, I think we're going to make it through there, but I hope the folks in the power up there and legislature, they do the right thing for us. You know, citizens of Georgia deserve this.
I agree with you, and the one thing we benefit from is we benefit from a very strong community support here in Columbus.
Absolutely.
And we also benefit from strong leadership here at Columbus State University. And I've sat down and had meetings with Dr. Rock, and we've talked about, you know, the future of the Space Science Center, you know, both with and without the current budget situation, and we've made plans to be able to move forward with the Space Science Center regardless of what happens here in the future.
Excellent. That is great to hear. Well, let's go on a more positive note now and take a look at some of the things going on. I hear our friend Buzz Aldrin is out there.
You know, Buzz Aldrin's been a man in the news lately here, and of course, hopefully people know this, but he was the second man to set foot on the surface of the moon with Neil Armstrong and Apollo 11. That was not quite 50 years ago, but it's been a little bit more than 40 years ago. And Buzz Aldrin's now 80 years old.
80 years old.
He
Wow.
is. And he's come out recently with a very interesting take on NASA's new vision for the future of human space exploration and human space flight here in the United States. And of course, people may know this, but NASA has kind of shifted their plan toward a more privatized workforce working to take human beings back and forth between Earth and low Earth orbit, which is at the International Space Station. Well, Buzz Aldrin's come out and said, well, that's all fine. That's not a bad idea in some ways. Let's use private companies to be taxi cabs to go back and forth from the space station down to the Earth.
Now, is that going to be a big market, do you think, that a lot of us citizens who can afford that would shuttle back, and also the astronauts back and forth? I mean,
I think that there are plenty of companies out there that believe that it could be, and they're now working toward looking into that potentially entrepreneurial venture of taking space tourists in large numbers back and forth between something like the International Space Station, some kind of space platform, and back down to the Earth. We're ways off from that yet, I think, and there's going to be many years of development. And that's kind of to Buzz's point. Buzz is saying, well, look, that's a nice idea, and we should let private companies move toward that. But NASA should not give up its ability to take human beings back and forth to space. And in particular, Buzz's vision of what should happen in the future of human spaceflight in the United States is to really refocus our attention on going directly to Mars. And so Buzz really has the opinion that we should take our space program in a direction that would take us directly to Mars. His idea for doing that is to not retire the shuttle exactly yet. Maybe have the shuttle have a few more missions to take up to the space station some components for a Mars spacecraft that could be assembled in orbit at the International Space Station, and then launch from there. And launching from orbit is a lot less, there's a lot less energy involved. It takes a lot less fuel, rocket fuel, and heavy lift capability if we take up small pieces, put them at the space station, assemble a larger vessel there, and then launch it from orbit to go to Mars. It takes a lot less fuel. It's a lot less hazardous. And so
that sounds like a very efficacious. I mean, that's an efficient way to do this.
It's a very interesting plan, and the spacecraft that Buzz Aldrin has in mind for launching from the space station would be built out of components left over from both the shuttle program and the program to assemble the International Space Station. So a lot of what we call off-the-shelf hardware. He's really thinking about, you know, building these things out of components that already exist, or that the fabrication is already in place. And what you have to understand about Buzz Aldrin is he's not somebody who did something famous a long time ago and then has kind of gone away.
Okay.
He's been a space industry analyst all along, and so he's really kept his finger on the pulse of what's happening in the American space program and in the space industry at large. So he really has kind of a unique and insider view as to what we should be doing to take human beings back to space and then on to Mars. And so his claim is that with largely existing hardware, we could get human beings to Mars by the year 2019.
Okay, wait a second. Let me see if I've got that right. You said 2019 to Mars.
That's exactly right. In just 9 years from now, Buzz Aldrin has laid out a plan where we could use, again, largely off-the-shelf hardware to get human beings to the planet Mars by 2019. And not only that, he has a more specific date in mind. He thinks by July 20th of 2019. Just so happens that happens to be the 50th anniversary of the Apollo landing on the surface of the moon. So 50 years after Apollo is what he sees in terms of a timeline for getting human beings to the planet Mars.
Nice symmetry
And
there.
The nice thing is, it really gives humankind a target,
Right.
something to move toward. And that's really what it's going to take to get the American public behind NASA and behind the spaceflight program again. We need to have a destination. We need to have some place where we're heading, where we're going, where we all know we can all get on board and rally behind the space program and cheer them on as they move in that direction. And that's part of his plan too, is to say, unless you have a destination other than just going back and forth to orbit, the space program really isn't going to capture the imagination of the American people the way it did during the Apollo era. So NASA really needs a destination. They really need a goal, a mission to follow after and chase after.
That makes perfect sense to me. I surely understand that. Now, there's also something else Buzz Aldrin is interested in terms of Dancing with the Stars. Oh,
yeah, well,
wait
apparently when
a
he's
second.
not being a space industry analyst, I guess he cuts a rug, shall we say, in his spare time or something. He's taking on a hobby, and let's just face it, when you've walked on the moon and you're 80 years old, if you want to jump on a silly TV show and dance around, hey, I'm okay with that. Actually, I have to just tell you, my money's actually on Buzz to win the thing, all right? Because he's Buzz Aldrin. He's practically superhuman,
There
right?
you go.
So this guy is a serious threat to there's a Bengals wide receiver on there and some other folks on there.
Yeah.
Chad Ochocinco better watch out for Buzz Aldrin, is what I'm saying. So
That's pretty fantastic. I'm glad Buzz is kind of keeping up with the dancing
Dancing with the
industry
stars,
as well as the space industry as well.
it was only about a year ago that he appeared in a rap video with Snoop Dogg.
You're kidding.
So Buzz, I'm not kidding you.
All
so,
right, now. Okay, all right,
so,
there we
so,
go.
Buzz is moving into the music and
I'm going to have to
entertainment
Google
industry.
that one. I've got to go see Buzz
Oh, yeah, you
and
do.
the Snoop Dogg there, all right? All right,
The
that's
Rocket Experience. That's what it was called. The song was called The Rocket Experience, if you want to Google that.
all right,
Buzz Aldrin.
well, we'll definitely have to do it. All right, something about the moon, though, you've got on your list today.
About 6 months ago, there were a couple of probes that were in orbit around the moon. They were taking highly detailed images of the surface of the moon and using their detectors to try to find evidence of water ice that might be buried in the craters, deep in the craters, near the poles of the moon, particularly the south pole of the moon. Well, it turns out that data, it took a while to analyze all that and to really examine it to see what they'd found. Turns out that data is a pretty strong indicator that there's not only water ice within those craters on the moon, but in large quantities. There's a lot of water ice there.
Really?
Now, this has heavy implications for if humankind were ever to go to the moon and try to colonize the place, because obviously if you were going there and trying to survive, having water would be a good thing. But before you needed water, you probably need air. And air, we can actually derive oxygen from the water that's there as well. So of course, water is oxygen and hydrogen combined. You can break that oxygen off and use that for breathable air for any kind of space colonist that might be up there on the surface of the moon. Well, then what are you left with? Well, you're left with hydrogen. Well, it turns out you can use hydrogen to power fuel cells and generate electricity. So the presence of water there, it's good for breathing, it's good for drinking, it's also good for making power. It really is large quantities of water would really be a great catalyst in order to push the colonization of the moon forward. And so that's why this is a tremendously exciting discovery, and it's certainly something that space agencies around the world will want to follow up on in more detail and go explore a little bit more the presence of water in the craters near the poles on the moon.
Okay, now we still have launches of the space shuttle going on. We still have those through September, October, I believe you said?
September is the target end date. There's 4 more left. The next one is the launch of the shuttle Discovery. That will happen on April the 5th. And it turns out just yesterday, March the 3rd, they actually rolled Discovery out of the vehicle assembly building on this big device that they call the crawler. The crawler is a massive tractor that rolls that 12 million tons of equipment and spacecraft out to the launch site, and that happened yesterday. And so now Space Shuttle Discovery sits on the launch pad awaiting its launch in just about a month from now, as it will go once again to the International Space Station. They're working diligently to try to complete the construction phase of the ISS before they retire the shuttle program.
Yes, and I'm concerned about that. I'll tell you on a personal note too, Sean, I want to go down to Florida and see one of those launches. Now, tell me a little bit, do you know the schedules of the next one's coming up after this? You said April?
Yeah, so the next one is April the 5th. There will be 2 more in the summer, and I have to admit I don't have the dates right off the top of my head. But then the last of those shuttle launches will take place in September. And so you're looking at one every couple of months now here for about the next 6 months, and then that'll be the end of the space shuttle program. And so so it really is an interesting time in the history of NASA, and I would certainly encourage people, if you have any availability or any flexibility to get down to the Kennedy Space Center, I would encourage you to plan on spending a couple of days there, 2 or 3 days there, because it turns out that shuttle launch schedule can sometimes slide, depending on the weather, technical problems, things like that. Absolutely. So make sure if you're going to try to go down and see a launch, try to give yourself 2 or 3 days so you can kind of wait the schedule out. It'll definitely increase your chances of being able to see one of these. But I've seen a launch. Right. It's a tremendous experience. Oh, yes. Fantastic, something you'll never forget. And certainly I would encourage people to try to get down there and share that experience with their family if they're at all able to.
I have too, but I've been close. I wanted to get closer, but I was coming back from a conference, and I noticed on the highway I was driving, all of a sudden no one was driving. Everyone had pulled off of the highway. This was as close as you could get, and there were people in the highway walking with their families, their children. There was a guy with his van who had monitoring the control center, and we saw this just off the road, and I tell you, it's a very emotional experience. If one has not experienced that up close and personal, I certainly would recommend it, just as you're saying. Yeah,
it really is. It's a very inspirational thing to see. The space shuttle is the most complicated machine ever invented by humankind. It has the most moving parts, the most technology in it, and to watch it and to witness the power of the 7 million pounds of thrust provided by those main engines as that thing is lifting off the launch pad. It's just something that you can't put it into words. You simply need to experience it. It's really tremendous.
Absolutely tremendous. All right, so tell us about Coca-Cola Space Science Center.
Well, the Coca-Cola Space Science Center had something kind of interesting happen this week, and of course, we just want to say first of all that terrible tragedy in Chile, and our hearts go out to the people who are down there who are suffering through that terrible disaster. This really is a very difficult time for them because a very, very powerful earthquake took place in Chile, one of the most powerful earthquakes on record, an 8.8 magnitude quake, and that quake actually rattled our seismometer at the Space Science Center very effectively. So we got good data on this Chilean earthquake at the Space Science Center with our seismometer for more than 3.5 hours. Wow. So the data, the vibrations from that earthquake kept coming in for more than 3.5 hours. Now, of course, during that time there were many aftershocks, and the one thing I'll say is the seismometer at the Space Science Center, it's working extremely well. Our technician Michael Johnson down there has been doing a lot of work to get that thing up and on the internet, and being able to pull effective data off there. And so, yeah, some of the images you're seeing up here on the screen now, that's the part that's highlighted in kind of a yellow color there. It's not very hard to see. It's not very hard to pick out. You can see when that earthquake was coming in. But each one of those lines represents an hour. And so you can see it stretches across 4 of those lines right there. It's the better part of 4 hours that we took data at the Space Science Center on that tremendous quake down there in Chile. This is a close-up version of the shock wave. This has actually been run through some filtering. We call it Fourier filtering. It's kind of weeding out the noise, and you're left with just the signal from that particular earthquake right there. And you can see some slight tremors off to the left-hand side there before the big shock started coming in. And you know, so this is really good imaging from the Space Science Center of the effects of this quake that took place down in Chile.
Now, this was an 8.8 magnitude, and I read in the paper something about it may affect the axis of the Earth as a result of this.
It actually probably likely did do that, and you know, even though that sounds impressive, it probably didn't affect it by very much. So, so these changes are minute, but the fact that it changed it at all is just incredible. And so what happens is this: you can imagine the Earth rotating on its axis, and as the Earth's rotating, it's kind of like an ice skater. If you've seen ice skaters spinning on their skates, well, when they draw their arms in, they tend to speed up, and that's because they're effectively a closed system, is what we would call them in physics. There's no outside forces affecting them. The ice is more or less friction-free. That's kind of like the Earth. The Earth is sitting there rotating. It's kind of like a closed system. So when that earthquake took place, there was a tremendous amount of mass that shifted in toward the center of rotation of the Earth and actually caused the Earth to speed up just a little bit. And so it's, again, very much like an ice skater drawing in her arms. As she does that, she will speed up due to the conservation of angular momentum. The Earth kind of did that during this earthquake a little bit. And because the location of the quake was not on the equator, it was kind of down south a little bit, it actually probably shifted the pole of the Earth, the rotational axis of the Earth, just a little bit also. And so a few inches.
Wow.
But that's an amazing thing. And so this is all to say this is a tremendously powerful event with literally global consequences as that tremendous earthquake, that 8.8 magnitude earthquake took place in Chile.
Now, you said something about a shortened day?
Yeah, and again, as the Earth, as that mass moved in toward the center of the rotation, kind of like the ice skater, the Earth's rotation sped up. Well, that's how we measure the length of our day, is by how long it takes for the Earth to rotate around one time on its axis and put the sun back on the same line it was before. That's about 24 hours, and so it's now about 1.26 microseconds shorter than that. Now you're not gonna reset your watch because of this time difference, but it is a somewhat measurable effect. It's one that they can actually calculate how much that the Earth's rotation would have changed due to this big earthquake down in Chile.
All right, that's very, very interesting, and you guys captured it right here in Columbus, Georgia, at the Coca-Cola Space Science Center.
We did indeed.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got an astronomy night.
Yeah, we have an astronomy night coming up. It's this Saturday night. We're going to be out at FDR State Park. That's a great place to go and take the telescopes out and observe the nighttime sky. If you've ever been out to FDR State Park, there's a main visitor center that sits right up on top of the hill. Next to that is an amphitheater, an outdoor amphitheater. We're going to be in the amphitheater. We'll be setting up our telescopes inside that amphitheater and around the outside rims of the amphitheater. And I would highly encourage anybody to come out and join us. There is a park pass fee. You do have to pay the $3 parking fee for the state. Actually, I think it's more than that now. I think it's $5 parking pass that you have to pay to get out there. But our program beyond that is free, so you can come out and join us at the state park. Pay your parking pass, coming out and take a look through our telescopes. We're going to be giving you a tour of a beautiful springtime sky out there, just full of stars loaded up out there. It's going to be a great night, and I would highly encourage people to come out and join us at FDR State Park. It begins at 7 o'clock Saturday night. And we're just looking forward to people coming out and joining us.
All right, that sounds great. Now, if they wanted further information, where can they go? The
source of all information, and a wealth of information at that, is our website, and it's www.ccsssc.org. Coca-Cola Space Science Center.org. It's just our initials. If you forget all that, just Google us. Put us in Google. We'll pop up there. Coca-Cola Space Science Center, Charlie, Sam, Charlie.org.
All right, that sounds good. Hey, I tell you what, Sean, thank you so much for being with us today. And I can't tell you, there are so many people that have come up and just talked to me about how well they love this show and it's so informative. So once again, thank you so much for everything you're doing here with us.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the time on the air.
All right, folks, we're going to end now, and we appreciate you dropping in to see us, and we're going to sign out and see you next time on the Coca-Cola Space Science Center here in Jordan Hollywood studio at coehp.tv.